Thanks everyone really for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you all around. Some of you have attended these meetings in the past. We hold them regularly, and some of you may have been invited before. Basically, these are updates of the state of the wild animal advocacy movement, if you want to call it like that, or cause area. And for the last few years, we've been holding these meetings to see what are the updates that the different key agents have on their activities. But also they can be useful as an introduction for people who are not really that aware of what's going on and really of what wild animal advocacy is about. So I hope this can be useful for you guys. In this particular case, there is something else we want to explore, which is whether we can find ways to channel more funding into the area, because there is still lots of work to do, and resources are really limited. So that's not going to be like our only focus here. We are going to be speaking about other things, but this is something that we intend to tackle probably later after the presentations. So, with that being said, and without further ado, I'll start with introducing the people who will be speaking today. We have Jeff Sibo from the NYU Wild Animal Welfare Program. Sorry. We also have Aditya SK from Animal Ethics, who is the person really hosting this meeting. We also have, I'm very excited about this because this is the first time we have them here, Richard and Ben from the Center for Wild Animal Welfare. Really great to have you joining us. Then we also have representatives from Wild Animal Initiative. And then finally, we also have some people from Rethink Priorities, which is not a wild animal focused group. They do a bunch of things, as you know, but who have been also focusing on this topic, among others, and have been doing a lot of research on the field. So, without further ado, I think I will, leaving the floor for Jeff, if you want to start, please.
Sure, absolutely. Great to see everybody. So my name is Jeff Sibo, and along with my colleague Becca Franks, I direct the NYU Wild Animal Welfare Program. And this program was launched in 2023, and so now has been operating for about 2 years. And I can say a little bit about what we have been up to and what we are hoping to do. And then, really looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say too. So the Wild Animal Welfare Program is a research, outreach, and field building program located in the College of Arts and Sciences at New York University. And so we engage in research about what wild animals are like, how humans and wild animals interact, how we can improve our interactions with them at scale, both by addressing anthropogenic harms and by addressing naturogenic harms. And then we also engage in outreach. For example, we host online events and in-person events. We do public speaking and public writing, try to increase the salience of the issue within the academy, the actual and perceived credibility and legitimacy of the issue in the academy. And then we also engage in field building activities because, as everybody here knows, and this is what other programs in our community are trying to address as well, we are severely bottlenecked, not only with financial bottlenecks, but also with a talent bottleneck. We need to do basic field building. And so we want to support early career researchers in having access to opportunities, having access to networking, so that we can really start to build a coherent, broad ecosystem of researchers in the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, law and policy for addressing these questions that wild animals face. So just as a sample of highlights from over the past year, and you can read much more about our highlights in the document that was circulated, we have done a lot of research this year. I published a book called The Moral Circle, which argues for extending moral consideration to a larger number of entities, including wild animals. And then we have also done a lot of policy work. We published a policy report about how cities and other local governments can improve the effects of infrastructure on wild animal welfare, and we'll soon follow that up with a sequel report about how cities and other local governments can improve the quote unquote pest and management policy impacts on wild animals. At the other scale of government, we are also working on a huge report in collaboration with Stockholm Environment Institute about how the United Nations can better include both farmed and wild animal welfare in the post 2030 sustainable development governments. Now, briefly, in addition to hosting some cool events and another annual Wild Animal Welfare Summit, we also have launched some new initiatives that are either housed in wild animal welfare or at least are partnered with wild animal welfare. One that I will spotlight, which is housed within wild animal welfare, is our new Wild Lab, Wildlife Inclusive Local Development. And this is a lab that is specifically trying to accelerate work at the science and policy nexus about how cities and other local governments can work with researchers to better assess and monitor the effects of infrastructure and land use decisions on wild animals, and then implement thoughtful policies to improve those impacts while monitoring the effects to make further progress in the future. We hired Mel Graham to be our science coordinator and appointed Adeline Minelli internally to be our policy coordinator, and are doing a lot of really exciting work. So much more to be done. We need to raise money. We all need to raise money, but we are really, really excited and proud of what the program has been up to, and grateful to other people in the community for making the work possible. Thanks for listening.
Wonderful, really exciting. Thanks so much, Jeff. So, um, yeah, really excited also to present, as I said before, our next speakers. Actually, the order is really irrelevant here. We could start with whoever, but I mentioned before the guys from the Center for Wild Animal Welfare. So if you are ready for the task, go ahead.
Very much so. Thank you so much, Oscar, for that very generous introduction. And it's lovely to see everyone. Yeah, hi, my name's Richard. My relevant background to this is that I used to be a prime minister. I used to be an advisor to the UK Prime Minister, and various other politicians in the UK. So my background is in policy. And I'm working together with Ben Stevenson, who's also on this call, and who is a extremely intelligent and able researcher, formerly of Rethink Priorities and other various impressive institutions. And yeah, together we are in the process of launching the Centre for Wild Animal Welfare. And our core thesis is that influencing government policy and building willingness and uh, intention among policymakers to incorporate wild animal welfare as one of the lenses through which they act when making policy that affects wild animals is just absolutely clearly and critically and squarely on the critical path for any theory of change that will ultimately result in a large scale improvement in well-being and reduction of suffering among wild animals, because it's governments that have the resources, legitimacy, and power to actually affect the lives of wild animals en masse. And so we think that that is it's a critical piece of the puzzle that collectively our community needs to work on. And we're very honored to have been working with the other organizations here on this call who have done so much to sort of, and are doing so much to put in place the foundational building blocks of understanding of how to think about wild animal welfare, and then how to, and sort of like developing ideas, concrete ideas for policies and things that governments could do to improve their lives. And we want to be the sort of the icing on the cake or the transmission belt or something that helps to translate some of those insights into concrete action that helps animals at scale over the long term. To be a bit more concrete, literally in some ways, we have hit the ground running and we've been working in the UK over the last few months to influence the UK Parliament on some policies that are live at the moment in the political agenda there related to animal-friendly infrastructure. So this is things, for example, like bird-safe glass, which people may well be familiar with. And this is very much building on the type of stuff that the NYU lab published a report on fairly recently. And we've actually been seeing if we can try and get some of that incorporated into policy making in the UK. We've had some moderate early successes on that. We managed to get some amendments tabled in the UK Parliament, which would require systematic consideration of wild animal welfare in policy making. To be clear, unfortunately, I don't think those amendments will actually become law, but it did provide a good opportunity for some of these values and perspectives to be aired and debated in the UK Parliament. We think this is the first time that's ever happened. And it also, we got some nice media coverage, etc., off the back of that. And we think there are some further opportunities we can pursue. In terms of the kind of focal areas for policies, there's actually a wide range of things that we think could be potential. And we might hear perhaps a bit later on the call about some work that Rethink Priorities are doing to flesh out in more detail some potential interventions. But things such as, for example, extending the use of fertility control feels like a thing that could be potentially like robustly pro net welfare enhancing, and things like pesticides policies where humans are already interacting with very intense deleterious effects upon welfare, upon very large numbers of animals and indeed astronomical numbers of animals if one thinks of insecticides. And we think that there are things at the margin that can likely be done to get the welfare dimension considered more in policy making. That is a summary of it. And to tie it back to the theme of the meeting related to funding, Ben and I have been doing this essentially, well, literally unpaid and off our own bat thus far, which has been fun, but it's clearly not sustainable. And so we are actively fundraising at the moment for this project. In the document is a link to our funding document. And also to the theme of the meeting, I can also share that we've seen it firsthand how constrained the funding environment is for this. And Ben and I actually are able to we've decided to put forward a minimum viable product version of our funding pitch, which is basically if we can raise 100K US, that will give us the platform to go ahead and actually make this center a reality. If we can't raise that, then we can't. So there's kind of real jeopardy here, and there's a real fork in the road, I think, as to whether the policy stuff, or certainly our policy stuff, goes ahead. So if anyone on the call wants to make a big marginal difference to the direction that this goes, then please reach out. And we think that this is like hopefully a very attractive philanthropic opportunity to take something from 0 to 1 on something that at least like potentially has got the potential to lead to quite a large amount of change for a very large number of animals over the medium and long term. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. So, Luke from Wild Animal Initiative, I think you are next. Really looking forward to see what you are up to.
Cool, thanks. Yes, I'm Luke. I'm the science director at Wild Animal Initiative. I think we are focused very specifically on academic field building, essentially trying to seed sort of more wild labs comparable to the institution that Jeff represents. And through kind of institutionalizing wild animal welfare science in academia, trying to generate more research output at scale to inform policy that Richard and his group could then go and advocate for. So in terms of some recent updates we have, probably the biggest thing is we recently launched our 2025 call for proposals. We have various grant sizes at from like seed grants that are less than 10,000 up to these challenge grants that are up to 100,000. And for the challenge grants, we have specific themes each year. This year, they are on variation in environmental conditions and how that relates to wild animal welfare. And that's sort of inspired by a paper that will be coming out hopefully fairly soon from our research manager named Michael, that is arguing for why it's important to consider like the sort of nuanced affective states in predicting how animals will respond to environmental change. So thinking about how if an animal is has been constantly experiencing negative welfare in their environment, they're likely to develop a pessimism that might lead them to not take opportunities to improve their situation. If the environment changes, for example, they might be less likely to migrate. And there's also a positive flip side to that as well. If animals have experienced positive welfare and take advantage of opportunities to further improve their welfare. And then another theme is on wild animal welfare and mortality rate. So mortality rate is fairly commonly used, say in the farm animal world, as a proxy for welfare. It's clearly a very crude proxy in the sense that it's just capturing like the tip of the iceberg of the most severe kind of suffering an animal can have. But especially in the wild animal context, I think it's quite plausible that mortality rate, especially if we get more specific, like age-specific mortality rate, could be correlated with age-specific welfare. And so what we're asking people to do in this theme is to either test for correlations between rough proxies like age-specific survival and more robust validated welfare indicators, or to look at the sort of proportionality between actual mortality and potential suffering due to different causes. So, for example, if we see that 10 animals have died of a certain disease, what can we infer about the time spent suffering across individuals from that disease within the population? So the expressions of interest for that are due November 14, and we're expecting to make final decisions next May. If you're not familiar with our grants process at all, we go through internal reviews of these expressions of interest, which are a pretty low ask, just to make sure that they're a good strategic fit on target. And then we have an external review panel that evaluates the actual scientific feasibility and credibility of the proposals that we receive. And then we ultimately make decisions based on the combination of strategic fit and their kind of scientific soundness. We also, with this call for proposals, are reopening our fellowship program and like quite significantly strengthening it, I think. So in the past, we had one round of fellowships where we brought in 4 fellows. And the idea here is to invest in early career researchers and pair them with a Wild Animal Initiative researcher as a mentor. And we're looking for people who are, say, coming from ecology or coming from animal behavior and animal welfare science and interested in learning skills from the other discipline. So we're trying to educate them about wild animal welfare concepts and also equip them with skills that will kind of incentivize them further in their career to apply like both um, ecological concepts and scales of analysis, as well as welfare indicators. And the kind of part of the hope there is that even if we don't manage to sort of philosophically persuade someone to care about wild animal welfare to the degree that we would like, although that's certainly our goal, that they will be incentivized to continue researching wild animal welfare in the future by, as a result of their interdisciplinary skill set. And what we're changing this year with the fellowship program is starting with almost a research internship where the fellows will spend time on a meeting every week with a wild animal initiative researcher and work on a desk-based project to kind of prepare for their later work. So it might be a meta-analysis to try to validate a welfare indicator, for example. You can consult the notes, the public update notes for this meeting to see a list of papers that we have in progress. But there's a lot of progress that's been made on our house sparrow project, where one of our researchers, Bonnie Flint, has been trying to validate some behavioral and physiological welfare indicators in house sparrows in Texas. And we're also hoping to finally publish a very long multi-author paper that's been in development and has been out as a preprint for a while on welfare indicators as an overview. And several of our researchers are also participating in these European Union cost action projects. One of them is about developing indicators for positive animal welfare, and the other one is about the evolutionary basis of sentience and affective states, trying to map out what types of animals might be capable of different affective states and why they've evolved, things like that. And in the outreach and institution building world, we recently held a workshop and sort of co-organized a full day of the conference from the Animal Welfare Research Network in Bristol in the UK. And this was generally well received, and it was good practice for us as well for potentially building towards launching a dedicated wild animal welfare conference in the future. Also attended many other conferences, which you can read about. We're currently in the process of finalizing a contract to potentially develop a wild animal welfare course at Scotland's Royal College, which is a veterinary school near Edinburgh, and hoping that this will lead to wild animal welfare being incorporated in their animal welfare master's program, and also be we're funding studentships there that will specifically be for students who are transitioning from an ecological background to an animal welfare background. So again, trying to develop those interdisciplinary skill sets. And a couple other quick highlights are we're developing a partnership between Conservation X Labs and the Botstiber Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control, which will be focused on rodent fertility control. And yeah, hopefully more details will come out about that as the partnership is finalized. And also, if you've been familiar with us before, we do internal research and we do outreach, academic outreach entirely, and we make grants. But we have been undergoing a strategic revamp where the conference going aspect of our academic outreach is being more moved into the research program. and grants and kind of larger scale outreach are being put together as a services program. The idea there is that the research program will look after developing the intellectual resources of the field, while the services program is about developing the human resources of the field. So earlier career education and just trying to provide scientists with kind of anything that they need to engage more with the field. So um, having opportunities boards and helping them to advertise studentships, things like that. And we're trying to approach this kind of similarly to developing, uh, for example, how our development team develops potential donors, thinking about where people fall away from the field and trying to target programs to prevent that sort of attrition and help value aligned people progress in their careers and help people who are advancing steadily in their academic careers to become more engaged with the field. So that's our update.
Okay, great. Thanks, Luke. So I'll present. I'll give you now Will from Rethink Priorities. So go ahead.
Thanks, Oscar. Hi, my name is Will McAuliffe. I manage research at Rethink Priorities. We are a think and do tank that tries to do research on topics that we think are neglected relative to their importance, and then either make recommendations for what organizations working in that space should do about it, or incubate our own initiatives when appropriate. Wild animal welfare has been an area of interest to us since about 2019, but I think in the past couple years, we've shifted our focus a little bit more towards trying to identify opportunities to support near-term intervention. So a lot of the work in wild animal welfare has been on research and academic outreach, which is great. And so we're taking more of a complementary approach, a bit closer to Richard and Ben's initiative on the Center for Wild Animal Welfare, where we're looking for opportunities for people to go out and actually start implementing some of these interventions, both for the purpose of directly helping wild animals and also attracting talent to the field. And so a couple things we have going on in that vein are, one, a collaboration with Wild Animal Initiative on trying to create a research program that could help identify which insecticides that are used in crop production might be more humane than others, with a long-term view of trying to promote the more humane ones over the less humane ones. And then a broader project of trying to evaluate a large sample of interventions that have been discussed in this movement for a long time, and with a view towards kind of shortlisting the very most promising ones along a number of dimensions, and hoping that that will be a catalyst to getting some of those interventions piloted and funded. And I think that probably some of our follow-up work in this space is going to be trying to do just that, where we do follow-up work to try to formally assess the cost effectiveness of some of the most promising options, or develop a more detailed strategy for how to execute it, to help whoever might be interested in actually executing it do that. So yeah, really happy to be included here. Always enjoy this meetup. Thank you, Oscar.
Great, thanks, Will, and thanks also for keeping it, short, because we are running out of time really for the presentations. So thanks a lot for that. And finally, we have Aditya from Animal Ethics. So whenever you want, just go ahead.
Thank you, Oscar. Hello, everyone. Nice, quick presentation to share with all of you. So I do know that most of you are already aware about what we as Animal Ethics do, but I also felt that because there are some who are not aware of what we do, I could give like a short presentation about our main focuses. So the organization Animal Ethics, we focus on large-scale yet neglected areas of animal advocacy, namely three. One is wild animal suffering, which is the focus of this call, but we also focus on other issues such as long-termism in animals and also invertebrate exploitation, because all these three areas affect a large number of sentient beings, but are quite neglected relative to other areas of animal advocacy. And in terms of our approach, we take a broadly long-termist approach, which is that we try to devise a strategy with the long-term future in mind. And so what does that mean? We focus on shifting attitudes as opposed to near-term behavioral interventions or near-term welfare interventions. We focus primarily on changing attitudes towards wild animals. And two is gaining prestige to this cause area of wild animal welfare. It could either be in terms of academic field building or in general changing public attitudes towards this cause. And then, yeah, third, like I mentioned, which is field building in general, making sure that wild animal welfare is on the agenda in the animal advocacy conferences, etc. So initially, we used to do research on topics related to wild animal welfare. These are just some examples, review of neuroscientific literature for invertebrates, and also strategic consideration for effective wild animal suffering work. So we used to do some research before, but then we stopped doing research because we wanted to specialize on outreach, and also because Wild Animal Initiative and Rethink Priorities and the likes and the other organizations in the space were better placed to do research relative to us. So we decided to focus more on outreach. And so as part of our outreach efforts towards this cause, we are working on different approaches. One is like making sure that the information about this cause is available in different languages. Right now we have around our website, which includes information about wild animal welfare, available in around 13 languages. Most recently, we released it in Japanese as well. And then we also released it in other languages such as Arabic, etc. We also give talks and workshops in different conferences, both academic and animal advocacy conferences, to different target audiences, whether it's academics, general public, animal advocates, etc. We've also released a book on Introduction to Wild Animal Suffering, which is accessible for the general public and which covers this issue in much more detail. We've also released a video course on our YouTube channel, which has 3 modules. Module 1 and 3 are focused on wild animal welfare, and it covers this topic extensively. And we've also released more recently this video course in Hindi as well, to make this information accessible to the Hindi-speaking audience. So with this, we have released our website and the resources that we have in some of the most widely spoken languages, whether it's English, Hindi, Spanish, and Portuguese. We also are working on making it available in Chinese. We've also very recently released our first documentary, Animal Ethics' first documentary, called Scientients, which is about the sentience of aquatic animals, especially aquatic invertebrates, where we have expert interviews and we talk about aquatic animals being sentient and why moral consideration should be extended to aquatic animals. And in terms of some of the projects that we are currently working on, as I mentioned, we released the Hindi wild animal course, and we are giving talks about it in different universities to different target audiences and also to animal advocates. And like I mentioned, we are currently working on dissemination of the Scientients documentary. We have released it in English, and we also plan to release it in Chinese next year and screen it to the audience there. So if any of you are interested in supporting us in screening this documentary in your institutions or in your area, we would be very happy to collaborate. And the third exciting thing that we're working on is AI and Animals documentary, which is already in the production stage, and we plan to release it in a couple months. Now, we expect it to be like a 45-minute documentary where we are interviewing experts from the AI safety space and also the animal advocacy space to gather information about how they expect AI to affect their area of animal advocacy and how will it affect animals. So essentially making this information available to the broader audience and the animal advocates, especially so they can strategize accordingly. And finally, we've also received funding to produce a wild animal documentary. But this funding is not a lot. So essentially, if we don't receive more funding for this, we plan to produce a shorter video, a high quality video, which has information about wild animal suffering, and we want to make it very accessible to the broader public. We've seen that there's a lack of resources for the general public to become aware of wild animal suffering. So we were hoping to invest in this project to create the wild animal suffering documentary. However, if we receive more funding, we hope to create a larger documentary as opposed to a shorter video, a high quality documentary, which will make this information accessible to more people in a more attractive format. Yes, so this is a snapshot of the projects that we're currently working on. Thank you very much.